I'm Angenette Levy, and welcome to Law&Crime Sidebar podcast. You know, October 31st, Halloween, is a fun day for a lot of people, both young and old. People get dressed up in costumes. The kids run around the neighborhood collecting candy for trick-or-treat. But for some people, Halloween is anything but a fun time or a fun day. That's because their loved ones were murdered on Halloween. So we thought we would take this chance to remember those people. So the first case we're going to look at is the case of Martha Moxley. She was a 15-year-old girl living in Greenwich, Connecticut. That's a very well-to-do place in Connecticut. And she lived across the street from the Szoke family. On October 30th of 1975, she went out with her friends for what was called Mischief Night. They were going to go out and maybe toilet paper some houses, just do some pranks, things that teenage kids do. She was last seen by her friends, reportedly, kissing a boy named Tommy Szoke. The next day, her body was found in her parents' backyard, and there was an investigation underway. There was a lot of suspicion surrounding the Szokes for a long time. It would take decades for an arrest to be made. In 2002, a grand jury indicted Michael Szoke for Martha Moxley's murder. A trial was held later that year, and Michael Szoke was convicted. Ultimately, his conviction was vacated, and prosecutors decided in 2020 not to retry Michael Szoke, which was stunning and upsetting to Martha Moxley's family. Law&Crime talked to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at the time, and he had always supported Michael Szoke. Michael Szoke, the Szokes, were related to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s mother, Ethel Szoke Kennedy, that is. So that is one of the cases we're looking at this Halloween. Martha Moxley, again, a beautiful young girl, and her family is still convinced that the right person was put behind bars for this crime. The next case we're going to tell you about is Lisa Ann French. She was a 9-year-old girl in Wisconsin who went out trick-or-treating on Halloween night in 1973, and she never came home. There was a long search for her over several days, and her body was found in a farm field. There were 2 paper bags. Her body was covered with one, her Halloween costume in the other, and a coroner, the autopsy revealed that she had either died of shock from sexual trauma or asphyxiation. There was a months-long investigation until a man named Gerald Turner was ultimately arrested and charged and later convicted for the crime. Lisa Ann French was just a cute little girl going out like many kids do on Halloween to go trick-or-treating when she was violated and killed by this man. He served some time in prison for the murder and was later released, then violated his parole and was sent back to prison. And ultimately, he was kept behind bars now for the rest of his life. It was determined earlier this year under a law in the state of Wisconsin that allows a court to determine whether someone is such a violent sexual offender that they should be kept in a mental facility for the rest of their lives. And that determination was made by a court in Fond du Lac County, Wisconsin. The last case we're going to tell you about is the murder of Teresa Halbach. And you might know this case from the Netflix documentary, Making a Murderer. I know this case because I covered it. And I can tell you that this crime shocked the community. I don't want to get into the controversy surrounding this case. If you've heard about this case, you know that Teresa Halbach was a freelance photographer. She had gone to the home of Stephen Avery, a man who'd been exonerated of a rape conviction a couple of years earlier. She went to that house and was never seen again. The documentary looked at whether or not that was her last stop that day. We were always told that it was. Her bone fragments were later found in a burn pit behind the garage of Stephen Avery's home. And his nephew, his 16-year-old nephew, was later arrested and charged with the crime as well. They were convicted at separate trials. Stephen Avery is serving a life sentence right now. He will never get out of prison. He has an attorney, Kathleen Zellner, who's working to change that. But so far, all of his appeals, he's lost every one of them. The same with Brendan Dassey, his 16-year-old nephew. So Teresa Halbach was somebody who was loved. She loved the Beatles. She loved to smile. And it was just an incredibly sad case. So we hope that while you're celebrating this Halloween, maybe you can take some time as well to remember these 3 young women, a little girl in one instance, Lisa Ann French, And just remember that this day is not always fun for everyone. And that's it for this edition of Law and Crime Sidebar podcast. It is produced by Sam Goldberg and Logan Harris. Bobby Szoke is our YouTube manager. Alyssa Fisher handles our bookings, and Kiera Bronson does our social media. You can listen to and download Sidebar wherever you get your podcasts. That's Apple, Google, Spotify, and many other places. And of course, as always, you can watch it on Law and Crime's YouTube channel. I'm Angenette Levy, and we will see you next time.